Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Pro podcast. I, as ever, am your humble host, Tom Bassam, and today we are talking about the future of sports venues, which, personally, when you zoom out and think about everything that goes into their design and management, is absolutely fascinating. How do you, for example, optimize a space for huge numbers of people and provide at least a baseline of an equitably high-level experience that, makes fans want to come back again? In order to do this and try and answer some of those questions, I am joined by a couple of true experts in their field. One of those is Jonathan Nelson, who is the Global Head of Digital at Populous, and the other is Paul Foster, who is the founder and CEO of OnePlan. Populous are probably familiar to most people in the sports industry. They are the company behind some of those absolutely incredible stadium renderings that you see every now and then pop up on social media feeds for football clubs or new basketball arenas. They're generally the ones that are designing those and implementing them. Perhaps the best known in the UK of that is the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in North London, which is one of the world's leading venues. It's not only a fantastic piece of design, but also a incredibly smartly thought out piece of human management, I guess, if you boil it right down. Populous's other projects also include things like Yankee Stadium, the Sphere in Las Vegas. It also has an event planning division that has helped deliver Super Bowls and the Olympic Games. OnePlan is a slightly younger company than Populous. It's only 5 years old, but it was named one of Sports Pro's Sports Technology Ideas to Invest in Now in 2003. And really, OnePlan is best known for its digital twin technology, which is essentially AI-powered virtual representations of physical spaces, such as football stadiums or event venues. As we dive into this episode, we examine the relationship between these two businesses, how it's changing the design and management of sports venues worldwide, and the role of everyone's favourite current buzzword, AI, in transforming both companies' operations. So, without further ado, let's jump over to that conversation. Paul Foster, founder and CEO of OnePlan, is that correct? I just asked you this 2 minutes ago, so I should have got that right.
Yeah, that is right, yeah.
Jonathan Nelson, your job titles escaped me despite me interviewing you on stage yesterday. Can you remind everyone?
I'm the Global Head of Digital at Populous.
And the reason we're here is because you guys have a very interesting and quite unique relationship as businesses. Who wants to start off talking a little bit about that strategic partnership that you guys have?
I can start with, why it's really important for us and a huge opportunity. So we're going quite quickly in the 5 years since we've been around. We've, kind of had good traction with some stadiums and arenas with digital twinning. And I think, for us, I've worked with Populous in the past, always been seen as right up at the top end of sports entertainment architecture, and having worked with them, and we're really, really keen on forming a partnership, working with them. And what it gives us the opportunity is to build our digital twins in much earlier on in the process. A number of examples, we've used the Olympics. We kind of come in a little bit later on, kind of operational planning, but actually there's a lot of advantages with having the digital twin embedded right in that process, kind of up front. So for us, we were really keen for quite a long time to work with Populous, lots of kind of conversations. So for us, it'll kind of help us take us to that next level. The other element to it is all the insight, all the knowledge, a hugely knowledgeable kind of team who've, been the architects, design work and the events team that worked on, many, many events and venues all over the world. That insight that we get from that really helps us to kind of drive forward the product as well. So ultimately, it provides more kind of value for money to the end customer.
And I hope the answer is that you're equally happy to work with OnePlan as well, Jonathan. But if you could kind of come at it from your side and talk about the relationship that you guys have and how that got started and what piqued your interest about what OnePlan do.
We've been aware of OnePlan for a few years through our events business, and we work on major events all around the world, as does OnePlan. But I think where the real value is coming from us is that we are a service-based business, and it's very difficult to have a products-based business inside of a service-based business. So having a products-based business that we find in OnePlan allows us to keep doing what we're doing, but also work together and start to overlap more without having any of the commercial or logistical or organizational issues that come from those types of situations. So we get to run free doing what we're good at, and they get to run free, and we just start working together more.
And how did it start? Was it were you sort of working together on previous projects and then sort of like, this kind of just makes sense, let's make this official?
Yeah, I mean, we've been aware of each other for a long time. Before kind of I set up OnePlan, I worked with the Populous team on London 2012 games, also in Pyeongchang in the cold mountains of the Winter Games in 2018. So we're kind of always aware and always kind of having conversations, kept the team updated with how our progress was going. And last year was the kind of right time to make it happen, start working more closely together. So I think it kind of, naturally evolved, and then things like kind of pandemic, put a spotlight on it as well, the need to kind of work more collaboratively and digitalization of assets and ways people work has really kind of accelerated. So I think COVID actually strangely for us as a business was actually kind of quite a positive step forward in accelerating things.
I think it's probably worth at this point a little explanation of what digital twins are. We've covered this on Sports Pro. It's been written about quite extensively. For people listening to this maybe are not aware, how do they work? What's their use in sport? And who wants to go first? I'm trying to tackle this one. Jonathan, you look like you're about to go.
I can start. When you're talking about the built environment, there is really no agreed definition of what a digital twin is, and it's up for grabs what that scope and context looks like. So there are a lot of companies that are doing things like building energy and resource usage and sort of like a BMS with lots of dashboards or maybe asset management or something like that. But with the expertise that both of our companies have, we decided to take digital twin and turn it into something that was suitable for us and how our relationships with clients work, which is why we're having a more operational and experiential version of a twin that has a lot of spatial information and operational information going into it. So that's the niche I think that it's valuable for us to carve out.
At a very, very basic level, it is literally what it sounds like, right? It's a digital recreation of something that is physical or will be physical.
It's both, right? So the real value in the built environment of digital twins is that most of the software that we use to design and deliver buildings, that model that we build doesn't really have a life after construction completes. We hand it over to the client, but very often they can't use it. They don't have the licenses or the expertise to make use of that. So we're trying to find something that's much easier for the operational teams to access and use, and actually looks a lot more realistic and lifelike, so they get a much better sense of the actual view of their venue.
A key thing here is that we're events geeks, venues geeks. This is where we kind of come from. So we never started off with the digital twin. We've got a digital twin and we need to kind of see how it can be used in venues, major events and such like. First of all, there was kind of a problem and issue. So initially we didn't have a digital twin platform. We were just 2D, do a kind of GIS mapping. So you'd plan on a 2D system. Now, halfway through COVID, one of our clients came to us and said, look, can you turn what you've got here in 2D into 3D? Because we can't walk through the door. It's a COVID hospital, but we're still planning for this World Championship event that's kind of coming up. What can you do? I was like, okay, that's interesting kind of problem. And then we looked at how we can essentially put a gaming engine on top of a GIS mapping system. If you go in a computer game, it's a made up world. It's not real. So we needed things to be geolocated really, really accurately. So that's kind of the first thing we did. And then when people start to experience it, the kind of light bulb moment started to go off. Oh, wow. So I don't actually need to go and fly to this venue as much. I can reduce down my site visits. Then the CFOs hear about it and go, this could save on all the hotel costs, all the flight, all this kind of stuff. It doesn't eliminate it. You're always going to need to do site visits, but it definitely can reduce those down. And I think the next phase on for us is then the commercialization of those digital twin assets. I can show sponsors what their advertising will look like. I can show people how the hospitality suites will look like, people's views from their seats, and then they kind of grew from there. But it's always started with a need first. It just so happens digital twin solves the problem. And I think if you look at some examples of like metaverse or other digital twin solutions, sometimes it comes like technology first, then trying to find the problem it solves. And that tends to not have any longevity. First, we really look at the problem. And that's the great thing about this partnership. We're coming in very, very early and seeing how digital twins can, solve problems very, very early on and have that as a living thing all the way through the life cycle of the venue.
We're a sports business podcast. Can you give me some examples of how that has played out in a sports venue in terms of this is what we've done with digital twins with some of our other partners that we've worked with and the use cases for that in sports?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of examples. So we digitally twinned Intuit Dome for LA Clippers. So initially it was to show Steve Ballmer what his venue was going to look like and make some key big design decisions, of which they did. They did make some big changes as a result of going through that fan experience and seeing what it'd be like. Next phase was commercializing it, so selling the hospitality spaces, selling the venue. They also did, very large kind of printout to the digital twin for the experience center, so people could actually experience, this is the seat I'll have, or this is the suite that I want. And then you move into kind of more operational planning before the venue opens, mitigating risk, or moving around the venue. Where potentially will there be crowd flow issues? Are there certain points in this venues where we're going to have kind of challenges? Do we turn the escalators on or off, for the operational kind of needs? So experience that venue and the team being familiar with it, and then following on from there. So that's a kind of an example here. But obviously, as mentioned with kind of Populous, some of those use cases are even much earlier on than that. So they have much earlier the use cases than we kind of experienced before.
What are some of those use cases?
So design is obviously a very iterative and labor-intensive process, and just trying to get all of the stakeholders together for meetings becomes difficult, or seeing updates in a timely manner is sometimes difficult. So if you can give someone access to live updates that look real and they're in a way that the clients can interpret better, right? It's sometimes difficult for people that haven't been trained to interpret 2D drawings and turn it into 3D in their head, right? So this allows you to go completely around that and have something that's not just a still image, it's actually interactive and live, and you can spin around it as much as you want with a high level of detail is extremely valuable for clients, especially when we have global teams and they have global teams. It just makes it a nice focal contact point. You can access it anytime. As we do major design stage updates, you get the fresh view of the model every time.
So in some cases, it's not even so much a benefit for you guys as experts in that field. It's more for the layman who you're showing it to be like, this is what actually this is going to be like.
Well, it's for the eventual owners and operators of the venue, right? And they really want to be sure about what they're getting. Architectural and structural documents for these things can be thousands of pages, right? And it's just hard to interpret when there's so much information they don't want to interpret. They just want to see it very quickly and say, okay, I got it, right? And then move on. And that's one of the base cases.
For context, the listeners, me and Jonathan had a discussion on stage yesterday at Sports Pro AI. I recommend you check it out. One of the things we discussed was sort of how these impact, as you said, like the operational security side of venue planning, and getting through some of those like more, I guess, slightly tedious bits that goes into that. Can you explain a little bit about the sort of the operational security side of using digital twins and the benefits thereof?
Yeah, so we had some use cases that with Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games, so with the official digital twin provider there. First time digital twinning had been used on Olympic Paralympic Games. So a couple of examples. It gives people the opportunity in security service to look at things like sniper line of sights, for example. A lot of the venues are obviously kind of temporary, so you don't get to see exactly what they look like normally until it starts getting kind of built. So there's things blocked by cameras, by light columns, by different kind of stands and stuff. So security being able to kind of see those things where there may be kind of risks and issues. Obviously, the opening ceremony was along the river. There's plenty of risks kind of associated kind of with that as well. And I think kind of going through the spectator experience into the venue. So what will the experience like be for different client groups, be it the athletes, be it the officials, be it someone with restricted mobility? What's their experience going to be around security? Because the security, has also got to work side by side with safety. So, don't have too much security in place where you're going to cause like a crowd flow issue. And also the experience. People want to have a good experience there. You want them to come back. You want them to, on the Olympic context, you want them to have an experience, a lifetime. So seeing how those kind of three things interact and using a digital twin to do that, because it's very difficult to do tests around an Olympic Games because you can't take over the city for a whole test event and simulate that. So it gives opportunities to do that when you just don't normally have those kind of opportunities. So for me, it's around kind of risk mitigation when we talk about security.
Is that just a case of running a model, saying like, run this as if you've got X amount of people coming in through these things, and it figures out those paths in terms of like where people go, the security, operational, that kind of stuff?
You can run like crowd flow simulations kind of in there. So we can take data from other sources and then essentially turn it into 3D. And it's kind of a more immersive experience to be able to do that. What does the evacuation feel like? Okay, let's go down to the ground level as a 5-year-old child. What would the evacuation feel like for them? Changing the sun's position. What's it going to be like at different times of the day? So you get kind of an immersive feel of what that would be like. You're never going to exactly kind of simulate it, but you're going to get much more of a kind of a sense of that. So quite often it's things like elevations, which you don't get from a 2D drawing, curb heights and things like that, where there may be kind of trip hazards and issues. What are the light conditions like in certain scenarios? So these are things you wouldn't normally get from kind of a 2D drawing, which enables you to do that. And we're now working on the Milan Cortina Winter Paralympic and Olympic Games, and there you've got some really interesting scenarios with snow depths, sun's position, and such like when you've got kind of big mountain ranges, all around you.
Yeah, how challenging is that kind of thing? I'm aware you can't speak too much about what you guys are doing with the IOC.
Yes, I think kind of Paris has really accelerated things. It's shown that there's real kind of value in this. There's real potential for cost saving, carbon footprint kind of reduction. The big thing from moving to Paris to Milan Cortina is the speed at which we can now build the models. So building in algorithms, building in kind of AI, because we're building like whole mountain ranges kind of out. So we've been able to kind of speed up that whole process, learn a lot from that. And I guess the other change for us as well, with Paris, we were a partner with the local organising committee, but now we're being an official IOC partner. That enables us to look ahead with the IOC and say, okay, what are some of the use cases we want to build in, and how do we want to kind of maximise this benefit over the long term, not just going kind of from games to games.
Speaking more jointly, what are some of the other ways in which you hope to expand the way you take this to market in the sports industry?
So right now, we're engaging a lot of our clients that are in the right design phases to try to get this in early and show them the use cases and how it evolves through design and construction, then eventually operation. It's pretty straightforward, but you can see what Paul was talking about a minute ago with evacuation and egress and those kinds of things. We heavily design for those anyway, right? There are very well-defined egress times during an evacuation that we have to design for, and we do these simulations already, but putting it into 3D gives you a much better feel of what that actually looks like. So 3 people per 10 square meters might bring a certain idea into your head, but when you see it versus 10 people per 10 square meters, it's a massive difference, even though it doesn't sound like it might be a lot.
And so it's just a case of, as you said, taking that out, showing clients and adding that into processes that already exist.
Yeah, bringing it to life, right, for them. And then all of the other use cases that can stack on top of it to give you a lot more information about your venue, right? So if you have a multimodal venue, you can start to get layers of information on compliance and regulation and safety for different types of events, right? And also seat view and seat quality changes drastically for all kinds of different events. And we can start to put that all into one place so that you can get a feel of what it does look like and how much it does change, not just the field of play and the bowl, but the rest of the venue as well for these kinds of things.
And what kind of other things are you being asked by existing partners, potential partners, when it comes to showing off this kind of stuff?
Yeah, lots of different things. I mean, when people first see a digital twin, there's an instant reaction like, wow, I'm in like a computer game, but of my venue. It feels familiar. Like, what else can I do? And there's kind of a lot of excitement that, we've had, requests to put digital twins into Fortnite, which, there is kind of potential with that. But I think it's really focusing on like, what are some of the problems that you've got as an operator? And a really good example is, a lot of the arenas now are getting pressure to have more and more events, and they've got to turn around quicker and quicker. So they're having like multiple events sometimes in a day. I think, Crypto.com Arena is probably a really good example where they have kind of multiple configurations in one day. So what is that like for the operators? How do they turn that around quickly? Can they simulate some of this in the digital twin? And I think the lines of sight, so when you're bringing in various different concert configurations, you're potentially kind of blocking certain seats in certain locations. So can you bring that concert configuration into the digital twin and say, okay, yeah, we can't sell this seat here. The line of sight's not going to be kind of so much. Populous have some really sophisticated technology looking at kind of, seat pricing, the views of the seats, potentially like linking that in with a digital twin. There's kind of a huge opportunity to kind of, maximize the value of that venue. But yeah, there's more and more kind of pressure commercially, but digital twin can really, really support that.
Did you ever put anything in the metaverse? We did a couple of years ago when we worked with the Power esports team. We designed a venue for them, and I believe it still exists in there and they still use it.
We've had a couple of kind of proposals because some of our models are so detailed, it's tricky sometimes to kind of put it into kind of as a computer game. So we have to kind of dumb down the model to make it viable for something like Fortnite. But yeah, the possibility is there, but yeah, not something that kind of we've done yet. But there's quite a few examples, of, concerts kind of online. But I think those opportunities will come to life as people want to commercialize their digital asset, not just a physical venue.
Digital twin, of course, is one use of AI in venue design. We talked about some of them yesterday, Jonathan, but perhaps it might be good to revisit that on this podcast rather than just on the on-stage session for the podcast listeners. What are some of the things that maybe need to be best understood about where we're at with using AI in sports venue design right now?
We're still very early days, right, with all of AI. And it's a lot of testing out potential use cases and throwing out a lot of ones that don't really hold any water. It's about finding that business value. As I said yesterday, the really impressive thing about it is that it's such a generalized technology. And so you can tune it to sort of do any application you're thinking of. You can push it through your own data and get your own results. Again, use cases are popping up every day. So we're looking to find the most valuable ones for spatial and operational data.
I'm guessing there's some pretty wild assumptions about what the sort of potential is for AI and venue design to do in terms of, I don't know, it's quite, this is the sort of scary end of it is whole companies going out of business because you can replace them with robots. But realistically, is that going to happen any time soon?
I don't think in operations or design, there's a lot of other industries that would be much more easily replaced. I think it just gets streamlined and allows these businesses to just operate much more efficiently and scale much more efficiently is where it sits. But I mean, the reality is that a lot of industries have been replaced by technology. You can try to go find a farrier for your horses. There probably used to be a lot of them, but almost none now. So it's just part of the evolution of human society. But the technology is highly interesting. But again, as being highly generalized, it doesn't have a job to do as such. And it's still a bit immature in a lot of ways. So there's always humans in the loop, right? Most of our experiments get you about 80% of the way there. And you still need, it's not a replacement for expertise, right? So that's kind of how we operate on that assumption.
Are you finding that in your work as well?
Yeah, so I kind of think of it differently. Not, a lot of people say, oh, it's going to replace jobs and this kind of thing. I think, can we use AI to ensure there are less incident and issues at events? Can we use AI to help events be more sustainable? And I think the answer to those two things is yes, there's definitely kind of potential for that. We recently did a kind of a beta test of some AI and put it on our website for free. It's called OneScout. And basically what it does, it helps you as an event planner find somewhere to have your outdoor event, but it asks you questions. So it says to you, okay, what type of event do you want? It's a festival, say, for 5,000 people. And it keeps asking you questions, the type of event, where you want it. And then it will find you a suitable location for that event. It'll take account of all your parameters, like how far people are traveling from, whether you need parking, all these kind of things. So it'll find you a suitable kind of location and you can start planning there. And I think the next thing for us then is to look at all the local rules and regulations according to events. So let's say the fire safety rules, kind of traffic management, who you get the permissions off, all those kind of things. Can we link that in? So it then comes up going, hey, we see that you're planning a food festival in Austin, Texas. Did you know that your food concessions will need to be 5 feet apart, for example? That data exists somewhere, but as an event planner, you just don't know what you don't know. So can we use AI to make events, safer, better chance of them getting the approvals, help them to kind of, reduce their risks and, reduce carbon footprint? I think there's a real big positive opportunity there. Isn't necessarily particularly complicated to go and kind of achieve. So that's kind of where we want to focus rather than kind of, this is going to take away your jobs. Like, how can we make the event you're planning safer and how can we help you kind of reduce some of your risks?
That calls back to something you were discussing yesterday, Jonathan. That's that regulation side in venue design, right? Where it's like being aware of the fact that what you design here at the Olympic Stadium isn't the same as something that you could do 5 miles up the road at Tottenham Stadium.
Right. The rules and regulations for building codes are extremely complex and they change from sometimes neighborhood to neighborhood. And then you have another layer of stakeholder requirements, right? That's another hundreds of pages of documents. And then you have the sporting governing bodies, right? Compliance and regulations. And it's so much information that you have to balance. So AI is only there to help, or one of the things we can really do with it is help filter out that so that the visibility is very clear about what you have to do and how far away you are from compliance or how far above you are. And when we're talking about the scale of these venues or the events that we work on, these are all mission critical things, right? You don't get to do it again. So having the ability to distill the pertinent information up front and have people working on the right assumptions from the beginning and then operating on those same principles is hugely valuable.
really good example that I was kind of reading this morning. So stadiums are putting on more and more events, and they're getting more and more approvals to have more events. Where Tottenham Stadium recently now can have more events. We're reading this morning to the Bernabeu is going to be doing, got approvals to do more events, but actually they've been pulled back because of the noise complaints from all the local residents. They're actually having to shift some of their events they had planned into 2025 until they kind of realize what they do. Well, was there an opportunity to somehow simulate that, use kind of AI in some way to say, right, we're going to have this concert here in 6 months' time, what was the noise kind of levels in where that event previously happened or that concert happened? Can we simulate what that would look like in the context of the Bernabeu? And what would the impact be for the local residents? So could they have avoided some of these issues they're now having by doing kind of more accurate kind of, simulations? And that's going to have a massive impact on their revenue. There's clearly some kind of examples where AI and digital twinning can be used to kind of support that.
There it's solving challenges, but is it creating any challenges for you guys as well? This isn't sort of exactly what we wanted to do, or you're getting pushback from existing stakeholders or even just people within the business who aren't willing to change and adapt to these new processes?
Change management's always a thing. There's nothing good. And then there's always people that have different views on what that looks like. But so far, most of the process has been bottom up and building up those use cases that the clients and stakeholders think are valuable, and then adding on to those.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So kind of adoption, I think, is kind of the key thing. These platforms allow people to kind of collaborate in real time more quickly, iterate more quickly, which is great. But not everybody wants to share what they're doing. Some people like to keep it separate on their PowerPoint presentation and not let anybody kind of, know about that. And there's sometimes kind of reasons behind that. So you've got to kind of take on board that and take people kind of along with the journey. And I think what I've learned from it is it's not always saying, right, you've got to change your process. How can what we're doing here with AI or digital twinning, how can it kind of enhance how you're doing things? And then, you've got to kind of take it in different processes. Certainly adoption is the kind of key one. But yeah, you sometimes you get some people that just run ahead with it and they're off and running, and straight away they can see the value in it. But yeah, you've got to bring people along the journey with you.
For sure. One sort of final question for both of you, actually, before we wrap up. If there is one sort of thing that you want people to take away and understand about where we're at with AI in this field right now, what is it? Paul, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess don't be scared of it. So it can be used at lots of different levels. So I use Grammarly, which has got kind of AI built into it to help write emails and even like WhatsApp messages and such like. So it can be kind of used at different levels, and across my organization, marketing team use it for different things. So don't kind of be scared of it. Play with it, start to use it in your own kind of work environment, and then start to see how it can kind of build up, how it can impact across a team, how it can impact potentially kind of a bigger workflow. So I think, start small, start kind of trying and playing with it. There's lots of kind of good AI out there, which, low cost to kind of use, but, get into it and start kind of appreciating how it can be used, because, it's here to stay. So yeah, start small and grow.
I would just agree 100% with that.
Care to elaborate a little bit more for our listeners?
No, I think he said it. I think he said it beautifully. So
okay, all right. Then we'll leave it there. Jonathan, Paul, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Tom.